Okay, guys. Right. Do you want to take the lead or shall I?
Hey, you invited me. You invited me to this, so this is all on you.
Right. So
Um,
basically, we're talking, and me and Chris often talk and often rant. We wanted to have a bit of a debate on AIs and the morals of it because I was having an issue with. I think on social media there's a bit of a sort of like a moral quandary where you feel guilty for using AI. Like there's a big kickback on social media against AI use. And so we thought we'd go through a few questions. I would sort of prompt some questions, and Chris would respond because Chris does. Well, I'll let Chris explain his qualifications to talk about AI, but it's more than me. I'll tell you.
so yeah, okay. So the thing is, I mean, I've been interested in AI since long before large language models were actually a thing, and it was because data analytics was sort of like my industry, and as I was getting more into that, I was starting to realize that actually this whole AI thing and machine learning and all of this wonderful sort of sci-fi stuff was something I want to pay attention to. And then all of a sudden, ChatGPT 2 came out, and basically I was hooked to the whole idea, thinking that it was going to be a technology fad. It's not a technology fad. So I've basically thrown a lot of my attention and learning, and also actually it's linked in quite well to my career as well, about actually AI. So basically I've spent the last 3 years reading as much as I can about AI technology, AI use cases, how it can be used against for personal use, business use, and all that sort of thing. So I'm very much an advocate for AI, and I'm not blind to the fact that, exactly as Frontal you say, that there is a taboo about it in certain circles, and I personally find it a little hypocritical that people get this whole sort of how dare you use AI, and I say this as my son is walking out of the room because he's one of these people that refuses to use AI, and we've had long conversations about it. So I come armed with answers, is my view. So I don't know how you want to handle this. We can ask questions, or
We
whatever you
have a
want
few
to do.
segments sketched out. So what we'll do is we'll sort of like prompt and then have a bit of a discussion. I think probably about, yeah, a bit back and
Mhm.
forth. So obviously I did give. I'm not that mean. I did give Duke a list of like areas we're going to go over ahead in advance because it felt bit mean to just bombard him. So the first one we're going to discuss is why does AI make some people feel guilty? Like the way you hear it's the energy use, the jobs, like technology has advanced, and I never feel like I have to apologize for having a car, but I have to apologize if I have an AI graphic. Why is that?
No, and this is kind of when I came out, when I come out with this word hypocrisy, which is quite, it's quite a strong word, and I'm aware it's quite a strong word, and I'm not a very aggressive person by nature, but so I am denied when I went back over this, is that do I actually come out of the gate swinging and say it's hypocritical, when people say that they don't want to go and use AI, and this is actually at the very core of the matter, really. So I did a little bit of research around it to see if I could understand a little bit more about some of the reasons why people are saying they feel guilty about using AI in order to fix a job. And I came across this. I came across this concept that I'd heard before, like in a previous life, called the anthropomorphic trap. Are you familiar? Have you heard this?
I'm not familiar with that one. No.
So it's something you will have done definitely in your lifetime, and it's something that actually goes back to evolution. This is really fascinating stuff, where somebody who is guilty of falling into the anthropomorphic trap is actually more likely to stay alive. And the example that comes out of this is that you're walking through the jungle, you hear a rustle in the bushes. It's a rustle in the bushes. I think it's a tiger. I'm going to run. The person who chooses not to see, not to over um, uh, um, over scriptify life, where is actually more likely to be eaten by the tiger when it actually inevitably turns up eventually. So like somebody sees it, the winds blow through the bushes, it's fine, it's nothing. It's why people, interestingly, believe in ghosts and aliens and that sort of thing. It's this whole idea of an anthropomorphic trap. They're seeing life where there is no life. And the big cause seems to be, or one of the big causes seem to be, and feel free to disagree, why people feel guilty that they're using AI, whereas they don't feel guilty using a calculator or a car or Google, or anything like that, is because LLMs, AI tools, they act like people. There is a sense of consciousness there, and it's a case of that people, and the I'm actually about to I'm in the middle of preparing another webinar that I'm actually going to be doing on this subject, so I won't go into a huge amount of detail about it now, but there are actual emotional there is an emotional what's the word, cost to using a tool like AI because it acts like a person when you're talking to it, and therefore it's almost like you've gone to your professor and asked for help with a paper, or you've cheated off your friend's homework, or something like that. It's the same sort of thing. You're associating a living, breathing thing having helped you do a task when you feel like you should be doing it on your own. And this is the whole thing. That AI tools are not living things; they're not real people.
Yeah.
And this is where the sort of guilt, I feel, does sort of like fall into like hypocrisy a little bit, because it's exactly as you say. It's a machine. You don't feel guilty using any other
Yeah.
kind of tool. Why should you feel guilty using AI?
I mean, I will say, because I've just signed up for another degree because I'm a glutton for punishment, um, and I've had to sign up to, to to learn a new specific type of referencing specifically for referencing AI documentation.
Okay.
And you have to reference the exact queries that you've used to get the responses that you're quoting, which is a weird concept for me. But I thought it's odd that, like, going back even just like a year, people were like, you're using AI, you're cheating, and it seems to be
Yeah.
slowly
Yeah.
becoming, academically at least, seems to slowly be coming in. But still, like, on social media, you get I hate to use the term, but cancel culture of like, oh
Yeah.
my god, that creator has used AI, and then there'll be an
hmm
apology, and it feels like you a social stigma, so to speak, if you use
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Um, it probably feel like more as a content creator than the average like person on the street sort of thing. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and I've got a couple of points to come back to on some of the later segments about content creation, because you're absolutely right. Just the content creators are going to hit this stigma more than anybody else, and I think that it's all very well saying is that people feel guilty because of the way that the tool itself is, but it does go deeper than that.
yeah,
And yeah, particular industries, particular use cases are gonna experience the worst of it a little bit more. So I throw this to you actually, is that what we see, the stigma that's actually been applied to AI on platforms like TikTok or any sort of creation channel, keeping in mind that these didn't exist 20 years ago. And in fact, content creation as it is today is still relatively new. Only the last sort of like, well, since COVID, let's be fair,
yeah.
that everybody has been getting into content creation on the sort of thing. But the whole concept of somebody cheating or finding a quick way to produce a high quality output, because let's be fair, if it wasn't high quality, nobody would care. And that's the thing. It'd be a case of like that's rubbish. So does it matter if they're using AI or not? Well, no. The problem is because it is high quality and it's becoming higher all the time. But this whole idea about somebody using a shortcut to produce high quality content is not new. Have you heard the term neo-Luddism before? A
Yeah,
Luddite, have you heard this from history? Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So the Luddites would smash looms up because they were just like, how dare you take away my specialty subject, my something that I have learned for years and years and years to perfect. And now all of a sudden kids are coming in with no training and able to do the same work that I'm doing. And I forget the detail of it, but I think the king had to send the army up to actually stop these Luddites from destroying the factories because they got really, really vicious with it. But it's the same thing. The whole thing about smashing up looms in the 17th, 18th century, whatever it was, is
yeah.
no different to people going on TikTok and saying you're using AI, so I'm canceling you.
Yeah.
It's sort of scaled up a little bit. I don't
I
know.
mean,
That's what I think.
yeah. I mean, it's interesting because one of the common threads I see is that you're ruining the environment from using AI. And obviously, I'm a tech guy. I've always been in technology.
Hmm.
Like processors do create heat, but not like no like what you, in my opinion, like just what you would, driving to work is probably a bigger impact on the environment than asking a question on. But you get this like this social impetus that like you're burning down the forests by doing it, and it's just, I find
Yeah,
it weird. I find it
yeah.
weird. It seems to be a heavy environmental. There seems to be a heavy environmental sort of
Hmm.
reasoning that they give,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
And
I
the,
think
the thing is, I can't carry on, carry on.
yeah, and I just find it really hard to engage with it because I just don't see. I've not like obviously you have server farms and stuff. I just don't see how it has the impact that people say it's having.
Yeah.
Is it having a massive environmental impact, or is that overstated?
So, yes, it's overstated, but it is also having a high environmental impact. And let's be really, really clear about that. People are exaggerating this whole thing, and I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about the process of how data farms use power and electricity and water, and that sort of thing. I mean, I've had conversations with people who believed that the water that was being used by these big data centers was then ruined. It was no longer water. It could never be used again. No, that's not true. That's not true. The water is recycled in the same way as if you flush it down the toilet. It's the same sort of process. Water is not being wasted. It is being used at a very high amount. And what people are concerned about, rightly enough, are being concerned about, is that there are plenty of places in the world that are experiencing high amounts of drought. But there are plenty of places in the world who are experiencing poor water quality, and yet these highly paid tech companies can seem to get all of the water that they need to be able to power these data centers. So I understand the point. I think it's an important thing. And let's be really clear. There was a forecast. Let me see. I've got this in my notes. So give me 1 second, just
Yeah,
so I make sure I get the number right. It was 935 tera. I will find the exact number. I can quote the exact number a little bit later, but it was something like 935. Oh, is it here? I'm around about here because I knew you were going to ask about sustainability, even though you didn't put it in
yeah.
in the thing. So I know he's going to ask, and you're right. And let's be clear, you're right to ask because it's a huge thing. There we go. 945 terawatt hours by 2030 is what the International Energy Authority. So they're sort of like the big global. Watchdog over it. They say 945 terawatt hours by 2030, which is something in the region of about 7 million% higher than what it was in 2000. And a big driver of that is data centers. It's not the only driver, but it's a big driver in itself. So I get why people are worried because it's a huge thing. However, here's my response: that because of tools like AI and machine learning that have been built into things like weather forecasting and national grids and things like that, the national grid that completely has been very open in using machine learning and AI for the last few years and leveled things up quite a lot in that sort of area, has improved the efficiency of power switching using different sources of power. Um, by a ridiculous amount. It's a huge amount. I don't have that figure, but it's a massive amount. Basically, we are wasting less electricity because of AI. And yes, there is a huge amount of increase actually going in, but without AI, who's to say that we wouldn't be increasing the amount of power we're using anyway? More and more people are using computing devices. We've got electric cars on the on the increase as well. Nearly every modern country in the world, developed country in the world, is pushing the idea of the electric car. It's going to be using more electricity. Thanks to AI, our national grid is able to switch effectively between the steam-powered, nuclear-powered, wind-powered, tidal-powered, based upon the information that they're getting from the AI-powered Met Office, and we're actually wasting less electricity as a result. If I was to sort of like summarize it, we are spending a few extra megawatts worth of power to save gigawatts worth of
Yeah.
power. And that's thanks to AI. There's no two ways of looking at it. You're right. It's a worry, it's a concern, and I get why people are worried and concerned. But we also cannot be blind to the improvements that AI has made to electricity and water usage and famine and medicine and everything like that as a result. So yeah, that's my argument.
Okay. Well, I think with that we could probably move on to the next segment, really, which well, obviously we've already touched on it several times. The subtitle of the hypocrisy debate,
Yeah.
which is like, are we holding AI to a different standard, and should we? So, for example, Photoshop.
Okay.
Let's just talk about you can replace and well, you, you can do the job of someone who's had 10 years of experience of Photoshop in minutes. And
Yes.
you know, is it replacing labor or is it improving labor?
And this is going to be an interesting debate. That's actually one for the ages. It's that the whole purpose of AI, and one of the big selling points of any AI tool, is that it's meant to be an assistant. It's meant to speed things up. You can do things faster, and whether you are experienced at using other tools or whether you're just new to the whole thing, it's supposed to save you a little bit of time. Photoshop is a really, really interesting use case, though, and I'm going to throw you off it completely, because Photoshop, Adobe particularly, are probably one of the biggest users of AI right now. That in fact they have done themselves out of their core key product, the one that everybody knows. Photoshop just became a natural language for everybody. Any kind of photo editing was called Photoshop, even if it wasn't actually the Photoshop
Yeah.
application that was used. But if you go into Photoshop now and you use any kind of application, any sort of editing tool that they've got at the moment, it's all using AI, all of it. So whether you're experienced in using Photoshop and you've just followed the tool as it's going along, and started to use the new tools, or whether you're brand new to it and you're using AI to help teach you how to use a tool like Photoshop, that's one thing. Or you can go onto a tool like Gemini and ChatGPT and get it to issue a picture within seconds. But my question to you would be, somebody who's not very good at that, somebody who hasn't got an eye for art, somebody who's actually they're just putting in a prompt into ChatGPT and getting an image out. Is it any good? As an artist, would you look at that and say, yes, that is worth hanging up in the Louvre Museum or something like that? Would a piece of AI art ever stay in the same chamber as the Mona Lisa or the Last Supper or one of Leonardo da Vinci's great pieces? Would the Sistine Chapel or anything that has been viewed by tens of millions, possibly even hundreds of millions of people over the years, ever stand up to a piece of AI art? And I think that anybody who has not got that artistic eye, and I don't, I'm not a big thing, but my partner Duchess is, and she talks about this quite a lot, is that nobody would look at a piece of AI art and ever say that it was anywhere near as good, a piece of AI art created by somebody who is not an artist, and say, yes, do you know what, that is as good as the classics, a Monet, a Renoir, or whatever. So are we holding it to a different standard? Yes, possibly, because it's not as good. And that's the thing. It's quick, it's easy, but is it as artistic as somebody who has picked up a pencil, a paintbrush, piece of canvas, and spent tens, hundreds of hours on a piece of art that gets hung on somebody's wall and enjoyed by generations to come? So, do you know what? It saves you time. It saves you money. Is it art? Yeah, of course it is. Is it good art? Probably not. The midpoint of that, though, of course, is that if somebody that does have a good artistic eye and also has AI skills and prompting skills could probably actually produce a piece of art using AI much, much quicker than what they would if they had to physically paint it. But it would be of a much higher quality than somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, and that sort of thing. Coming on to the whole question, though, is that what is art in the first place? Because that kind of is another sort of thing to look at. I mean, there was a guy 100 years ago who basically took a urinal, turned it upside down, signed his name on it, and people came from hundreds of miles to come and watch it as art. And I'm just like, if I could type a prompt into ChatGPT, I'd probably say it's more exciting to look at than an upside down urinal. But it
Yeah,
was art. It was the intention behind it rather than the skill itself.
yeah, yeah. It's just it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's I think we'll touch on this. We'll go into this more in depth later, but it's like the more easy it is to produce art, does it not cheapen art? Like you can make something that looks an awful lot like a Van Gogh with a sunflower,
Yeah.
and
But would it be a Van Gogh?
but if I didn't know Van Gogh, would I be able to tell them apart? But by suddenly having more of these things does not cheapen the
Mhm.
original, does not cheapen the quote unquote real artists. You know, if anyone could
Um,
paint, if anyone can make a good picture of a bird, why does anyone want a good picture of a bird?
okay, but yes, um, but when it comes to art, the case is that it's not about it's not about the person who's created. It's not about what's actually showing on the canvas. Art is about how it makes you feel. But that's the whole point of it. And yes, you're absolutely right. Is that sunflowers has brought people to tears just by watching it because they understand. Talking about Van Gogh as as an artist, and again, I'm not an art critic. I don't know a great deal about art. I did watch that episode of Doctor Who. However, I learned a little bit more about Van Gogh as a person, and but the reality is that people who got to know the artist and understood the intention behind his painting and the pain that went into it, that is what art is, and that has driven people to tears behind that. The difference between that art and AI art is that there's less of a skill in the actual putting it onto the canvas, but those people who are actually creating that really, really high quality AI art become less of a practitioner and more of a director. So, Steven Spielberg has won how many Oscars? I don't even know how many, and has never appeared in any of his films to my recollection. I don't know. Somebody will at me and tell me I'm wrong. Um, he creates that art by instructing other people to do something. So that's actually not that different to somebody prompting an AI engine and saying, "This is what I want you to create." And even if someone was to your second point, even if someone to say, "I want you to replicate something that looks like Van Gogh," um, the AI knows what the style is, but it won't be able to replicate what he has done completely because it doesn't know. It's not a person, and this is that what a lot of people really seem to forget. So I'm going to keep coming back to that. There is no thought process, there's no creative agency inside the AI that will allow it to feel what Van Gogh felt when he painted those paintings and therefore create it. So even though there was intention behind the direction of creating that art, the AI couldn't do it on its own, not without the intention of an artist to say, "This is what I'm trying to portray."
But I'm going to push back on a little bit there, Chris. I could also ask ChatGPT to make me a tragic backstory for the picture.
You could do that. You're absolutely right. So this is one of those elements that comes down to the. That's a really good point, but it comes down to the consumer of the art, then, isn't it? Is that whether or not they want to do it. One of the ones I'm in an hour on about whether or not to come back to is Banksy, because very very famous modern artist, makes it very very clear what the message is behind his art. Could I ask AI to actually do a very very similar thing? I could, but I would have to be very very specific about the message that I was trying to give. And yes, it could probably reproduce something that actually looks a lot like a Banksy, that people would look at it and say, "Oh, this looks an awful lot like Banksy as well." But what the people would be interested in, I would think, what the art fans would be interested in, is not about the method in which I created it, but in why I created it in the first place. What was actually the intention behind the art?
Yeah.
Um and that's basically what I keep coming back to, is that we become. I can't paint, I can't draw. I've never been able to, but I would like to think that I could create a wonderful vista, prompting an AI, and I would put my heart and my soul into what I was looking at and what I was trying to get. And it would produce something, and I would say, no, that's rubbish, get rid of it, and I'd scrub it out, which is no different to, I think it was Monet, who was famous for just completely scrubbing over all of his canvases. And we've got lots of evidence. I mean, they even found, didn't they, behind the Mona Lisa, that there was actually another painting behind it, and they could only assume that he painted it, hated it, painted over it in white paint, and then painted the Mona Lisa. And again, what's different for me prompting ChatGPT, it coming out with something I don't like, and me saying, no, 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 this is not what I'm after. Giving it my heart and my soul, and it producing a piece of beautiful art that can move people to tears.
I guess that there is an argument that you could have, that separating the moral complexities of it, do at the root of it, if even if it's like quote unquote fake or AI, or the backstory is made up by AI,
Hmm.
if it moves you, is it not fulfilling the purpose of what art is anyway? Yeah,
It's exactly my
like
point.
like
That's that's exactly the point.
but then the issue becomes trust. Because had you breached the trust by that person by, I guess, the core part of it is, are you portraying yourself as the artist, or are you portraying the AI as the artist?
So let me ask you this, and this is going to relate to another subject a little bit later. But let's just say that there is an artist, somebody who is an artistic spirit, and they are disabled. They actually are not able to physically create the art, but inside their heart and inside their mind and inside their whole soul is this art that is willing to get out. Isn't that then a good thing that they can use AI to do that?
Yeah, I'll come back to that, because there was an entire section on that specific thing. So
Yeah.
I'll circle around back to that later on. I think I've come to the natural progression here, though. To be fair, of moving on to the third segment, which is, because it touches on most of the things we talked about. Is AI theft?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Which I'm sure this is one that you've heard many, many times.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
It's a big
originally,
one, right?
because originally we all know they were programmed using crawlers crawling over,
Hmm.
sucking in vast repositories of pictures, texts,
Hmm.
books, and not always with the authorization of the content owners.
Okay. Does it need to though?
Well, hang on, I had a note specifically written around this. Hang on, I had a note specifically written to prompt you here. Right. If I download Disney films and learn the animation
Okay.
from them, that is learning.
Right.
If I download Disney films and redistribute them, that is
Okay.
theft. Where does
Correct.
AI sit on that scale? If I'm using bits that have been learned
Hmm.
and copied from Disney
Hmm.
films, is that not theft, or where does it sit on the scale?
Okay, so we need to be very, very specific. From my point of view, we need to be very, very specific to say that learning from and copying are two completely different things. And this is the separation that a lot of people really find difficult. I'm trying to, what was the studio name? ChatGPT trained its models on, it was an anime studio. What was it called?
I don't know, I'm afraid.
It'll come back to me. But basically, they admitted that they had trained this whole thing, and then people were going into ChatGPT and creating like loads of images of this particular studio and that sort of thing. And they were saying, well, clearly this is copyright theft. You know, they've gone and trained this stuff, and they've just copied all of this data, and then they're just replicating whatever it is that they're seeing. That's not how AI works, and that is not how large language models work. And this is the big crunch, and this is the big thing. And I do have this conversation with a lot of people often. The way that an AI model is trained on text and imagery is not to copy the data and to store it in a big, huge, massive database and use it then as a reference for something else. And I think this is one of the things that a lot of people, I know, I'll put my hands up and say it took me a long while to get my head around how this technology works. The whole idea of transformer technology. I won't go into a huge amount of detail about it now because you'll all be falling asleep, but it's not AI tools, systems are not a big, huge, giant database full of imagery and text and whatever. That's not what happens. The data is looked at, crawled, used, and whatever, and then it's patterns that are learned from it. When it comes to language, it's patterns between different words used in particular sentences. When it comes to imagery and video, it is patterns with colors and shapes and that sort of thing. And then alongside those patterns and shapes is an awful lot of metadata to describe what it is that it's actually learned. The data is removed from the entire thing. So even if the Disney example came along and said that, you know, I'm gonna go and watch Lady and the Tramp and I'm gonna learn everything from it, there isn't a single image of Lady and the Tramp that is stored in ChatGPT's or any other LLM systems services. What is stored there is the patterns between the colors and the shapes and whatever, along with the metadata to say, oh yeah, by the way, this is from Lady and the Tramp, or this is from Disney, or this is a dog, or this is 1950s animation, or whatever it is, so that when somebody goes in and says, give me a 1950s animation of a dog eating spaghetti, that pattern that has been learned, it doesn't recall the image, it recalls the pattern. And it'll come up with something pretty accurate because that's how good this technology is. But the data itself has been lost. The data doesn't exist within the services. It's not been copied. It's just been learned.
I'm gonna like again, you know the technology better than me, but like
Yeah.
I could go on to Chat GPT and say, here's a picture of me, make me look a little bit more like Sonic the Hedgehog, and it would do that. How can it do
Okay.
that without knowing what Sonic the Hedgehog looks like?
Yeah. And it's because it has taken images of Sonic the Hedgehog that other people have labeled Sonic the Hedgehog, not the AI itself, and has understood that, you know, it's spiky, it's blue, it has a weird frown and looks kind of athletic, and it associates all of those characteristics and those traits with the term Sonic the Hedgehog. But there's not an image of Sonic the Hedgehog that's actually referred to in it and sort of like references it and says, "Oh yeah, that's what Sonic the Hedgehog looks like. Let's see what I can do." It is literally just transformer patterns. It's mathematical algorithms, basically, that basically figures out what colors and shapes and whatever it should actually amend you to. But it's important to highlight that behind all of those mathematical algorithms are also tons and tons of metadata, what we call parameters that will describe the patterns that it's actually learned in largely text. So yeah, that's how it does it. It doesn't have an image to reference. It's just learned what Sonic the Hedgehog might look like based upon what other people have told it.
So obviously, going so like it's a developing technology, as we all know. Does that still seem true? Like if I'm using agent mode and I say make me something looks like Sonic, it'll go off and find pictures of Sonic and then use that. Is that not how agent mode works?
So there is actually a couple of legal cases going on about that at the moment, and there's a couple of things that, and depends on which tool you use and what you'll actually use, because I've gone and used an agent, but when the Darth Maul series Shadow Lord came out on Disney Plus, or when it was coming out, I was very excited about it. You might have seen it. So I wanted to try and get ChatGPT to make me look like Darth Maul, and it refused. Absolutely point where it refused because of copyright. Darth Maul is a copyrighted character. We're not doing it.
Yeah,
Um, I managed to get around it by downloading an image of Darth Maul from Google and saying and uploading that image and saying, "Make me look like that," instead, and
yeah,
then it did it. So it was not a copyright. That was me. That was my choice. Actually, downloading, oops, a copyrighted image,
yeah,
and then telling the LLM, yeah, use this as reference. So that's a slightly different use case. That's actually copyright that I have broken, not the LLM.
yeah.
If the LLM knew that this, oh, wait a minute, this is copyrighted material because it had stored that data elsewhere, then it would have refused it as well in the same sort of same sort of use case. But it didn't have that image stored. It doesn't store images, so it didn't know that I had given it a copyrighted material. There are other LLM tools that will actually say to you, Gemini will say to you, if you upload an image, if this is copyrighted, you should check with the owner before you actually use this. As a sort of like a defending themselves, I guess,
Yeah.
from that sort of thing. But so yes, it can be done. They do try to not do it, especially if it's sort of like coming on copyright. However, but there is a case actually. It was earlier on this year actually, but where the U.S. one of the courts in the U.S. Had actually ruled in Anthropic's favor when somebody tried to sue them to say that, wait a minute, they're using my data and I haven't given consent. And the court, after many times, actually went through and said, yeah, it's fair use. It's allowed by the law because they're not actually copying the data; they're just having a look at it.
So moving on a little bit, but stay on this segment because I think it's the only where. So there's a news article I've been was reading literally yesterday. Obviously, going to keep what I'm saying PG, but I'm sure you're already aware
Okay.
of where this is going.
Yeah.
There was a member of parliament where images of a lewd nature were made on Grok AI, I believe it was,
Hmm. Yeah.
and there's court cases being pushed through about people's rights to privacy of their own pictures
Hmm.
being used on AI to develop, in this case, like almost like a revenge porn sort of thing,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
are you not worried about how, well, firstly, that if those laws go through and get passed, how sweeping they will be, and
Hmm.
are they right to be sweeping? Does that not? Do people not have a right to the privacy of their own image?
So, it's a really difficult pill to swallow, but if you put an image of yourself out into the public domain, it no longer belongs to you. Anybody can view it, anybody can look at it. People can memorize that picture, people can put it into their mind and recall it through normal memory. And what the AI is doing is a very similar sort of process. It's doing it through a mathematical model, but it's actually doing the same sort of thing. The only difference is it's not a person that's doing that. It's a machine that's doing that. However, it's still a person behind the intention that is taking that image of that other person and then doing whatever it is that they need to do it. The problem that we have, the biggest problem that we actually have, and it's a much deeper issue, I believe, is that it's not about the images being counted as fair use or
The
whatever.
audio's
It's the
just cut out
intention
for a
behind the
second.
image. Oh, let's try that.
1 second.
I can still hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you again now.
There we go. There we go. Probably a little glitch. I forgot what I was saying. So yeah, it's similar to the art thing earlier. It's not about who has rights to do whatever to the image. It's about the intention behind it. There's already law in place in the UK and in many other countries in the world to say that if somebody was to create a nude photo of a living live person, that's illegal without their permission. At least that is illegal. That's not allowed. What was in question was not whether or not somebody's image on Twitter or X or whatever it's called now could be used with AI. It was whether or not it could be used to create lewd images. That's really what was in question. I'm sure that some of these people, if somebody had taken AI to actually create a more flattering photo of somebody, we wouldn't have been having this argument. Somebody did this with Wicked when the Wicked film came out. Is that they took the poster of the original Wicked film and they used AI to actually create a new version of the Wicked poster that looked more like the stage show poster. Um, and I forget the actress's name now. When she found out that it happened, she lost it. She went completely berserk, but because she felt that it was an attack on her personality and an attack on her culture and her race or whatever. And it was only when she actually got to hear from the person who created that image to say that, no, I was actually just trying to do a fun thing and base it on the stage show, that she actually came back and apologized and said I overreacted because she didn't understand the intention behind it. And again, that's really what I think art is all about. It's not about what's actually happened, it's the intention. If somebody takes one of my images and decides to put, like, put me in a pair of Speedos and really, really muscly, I'm not going to argue with that. It might look pretty cool. But somebody else might. Somebody else actually might take offense to that. And it should then be their right to say, no, wait a minute, I don't like that. That's not allowed. And have their right to sort of like have that removed, and that should be included. But for anybody to say if there is any image of me online that I don't approve of, I want it removed from the internet. I believe that should be law. The practicalities of it, on the other hand, that's more difficult.
So going back, same topic, but law, obviously. So within Europe, we have a right to be forgotten about. You've done the Google search before, and you've seen some of these responses have been removed due to EU law, etc.
Yes.
To my
Yes.
knowledge, there is no way for an AI to search for and remove such information. So surely that's in breach of the EU law with the right to be forgotten, because you're not
So
removing them from these LLMs.
the right to be forgotten under GDPR, and I may be corrected on this, but the right to be forgotten under GDPR is the right to be forgotten by an organization that you do business with. In other words, if I decided I'd had enough of Facebook or Meta, and I said I don't want any of my detail on Meta, then Meta would have to scrub all of their systems, all of their databases of anything that is to do with me that I have uploaded. That was from my point of view. What they cannot do, and what is an exception under GDPR, is that if somebody had taken a screenshot of my image and posted it on another page, that's actually not me that's doing it. So even though they are honoring my right to be forgotten and to scrub everything that's to do with me from their systems, if somebody else has taken a copy or a video or an image or something of me, Meta have no control over that. That's not something that they can do. Very similarly with LLMs, you could go to an LLM and say, if you've got any data on me, I want you to remove it. What they would be doing then is removing any metadata reference to you and your name and anything like that, and that could actually happen. But that wouldn't remove any sort of connected but removed reference to you that somebody else has created, but because they haven't forgotten you. The person who's created that reference, they've not forgotten you. So you'd have to go to that person and say, "I want you to forget me as well," so on and so forth. Which is it's a bit of a flaw in GDPR, but I think that's probably where we're going to see things happening. To say that I don't want any of my stuff on AI, you have the right to do that, but that doesn't guarantee that you're going to be scrubbed from their systems. At all, and that would be the same if it was Facebook, Meta, an AI system, I don't know, an airline that you've flown with, or anything like that, because references of you are going to appear throughout their system all the way throughout.
Okay. I think with that, we're probably ready to move on to the next section, which is the working class perspective. Now, as a long
Mm.
time leftist. So ultimately, obviously, person to person, you know, I use AI occasionally to get things to help me with things. Yeah,
Hmm.
hands up. But who does it benefit at the end of the day? It benefits does not benefit corporations and like meanwhile the working man, the person whose job it is to like the person who spends 17 hours a day making backdrops for Twitch, that industry's
Yeah.
disappeared overnight because everyone could do it themselves. What
Hmm.
you know is it not costing jobs and in real terms costing jobs? Like, why would you have a PR department when you have an AI? There's talk in the media recently about in hospitals like making massive cutbacks to receptionists for A&E departments because they want to put
Yeah.
an AI system in
Hmm.
to treat basically triage people as they come in.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
But the real cost of that is thousands of jobs.
Okay. So this is something that's been a bit back and forth a lot. And the short answer, and I'll go into a little bit more detail, but the short answer is that at the moment, AI hasn't stolen a single job. What it has done is that it's changed its focus. And the idea, what that means in a what that means in a nutshell is to say that yes, somebody may not be responsible, may not have a particular responsibility because AI is now able to do it. You know, 24 hours a day, doesn't sleep, doesn't get tired, whatever.
Pardon me,
However,
the audio dropped out again. Sorry, 1 second. Speak again for me, Chris.
try again.
Yeah,
How's
it's
that?
back now. It's back now. Yeah.
There we go. There we go. It might be my end. I don't know. I'll find out when I go back on the recording. Um, So yeah, where was I? What was I saying? So yes, yes, jobs may not need the responsibilities they actually because AI is able to actually take over. But on the other hand, there's actually lots of other jobs that are being created as a result of AI going. So there is basically it's not job losses we're seeing; it's job shift. And it's not the first time that we have seen the same thing over the last, many couple of 100 years, actually. The invention of the printing press, the invention of the telephone, the invention of the digital telephone exchange, the invention of broadband internet, the invention of the light bulb. So people actually lose their jobs. But those people were actually then retrained to do, or were able to eventually be retrained to do other jobs to support the new technology. This is not a new thing where jobs are being lost because technology has actually been able to take over it. In fact, it's many thousands of years old. Plato actually complained about the fact that the written word was becoming so widespread, like so many people were learning to read and write, that there was no need for heralds anymore. These heralds were losing their job because people were able to read what was going on rather than actually listen to it being spoken. In the UK, in Britain, ancient Britain, we went through exactly the same thing when Bibles were first translated into English. They didn't have to rely upon a minister to tell them God's word. They could just go and read it themselves, and that put people out of work. So AI is not any different to any other new piece of technology that is seeing a shift in focus of people's responsibility.
But I will push back with the exact example I gave there, which is obviously because it was in the media recently that they're looking to ideas of replacing receptionists. Now, receptionists are
Hmm.
a band two role, but they're not. It's not required. It's not like an AI programmer or an AI. They would be like a band 7 or 8. These people aren't going to suddenly turn around and become support like tech support for the new AI system. Those
No,
people would, in real terms, those people would lose their jobs and they wouldn't get a job. They'd have to diversify to a different sector. No, they're not going to go into AI. So
No, you're right. It's a bit of a trickle down effect. I hate saying this. Forgive me for saying this, but it is a little bit of a trickle down thing where we've got people like me that I've never been I've been interested in technology and coding, but I was never a skilled coder until AI came along, and I had it teach me how to code, and now I can write scripts and scripts of code. So I am now able to actually move into a position where I can support these sort of departments. So the job that I'm actually currently doing, somebody who'd never been able to do it before is now able to use AI to actually be able to go and do that kind of job, because AI can help teach them do the sort of job that I'm doing. The job that they were doing, somebody else can then pick up the skills to actually learn to do that through using various different study techniques and rules and whatever. And listen, it's a much more complex web than that, but we can also talk about the fact that teachers are using AI to deliver lesson plans, create lesson plans, rather than staring at a screen for hours at a day with a writer's block, which means that they spend more time with pupils. Pupils are actually coming out of school, will eventually, if this all goes according to plan. Teachers are coming out of school with the greater ability to read, the greater ability to critically think, to come out with much, much higher skills. What we're seeing is not a receptionist leaving a job and then going to become an AI developer. What we are seeing is a shift of everybody, like a domino effect, moving towards a higher grade because AI is saving time. People is AI is teaching people how to do things that they never would have considered doing before. And that's where the value of it's actually coming from. You're right. People are going to end up losing their jobs. We don't need you anymore because AI can do it for you. But on the other end of the ladder is we need more people to do these jobs because AI, everyone's using AI, and it just everybody shifts sort of like that direction.
but on a macro scale, like, you know, isn't the only real people who are saving money and coming off better out, like the rich, the rich elite, the big corporations,
Okay.
they're going to be saving millions, whilst the real cost is going to be borne by the working class person who's no longer needed.
So, I mean, you're right. I'm not going to turn around and say, I'm not. Listen, I'm not a huge fan of capitalism in the way that it is. The divide between the rich and the poor has never been greater, and it is a big, serious issue. And I'm not going to sit here for a second and say that that's not something that we should be concerned about. It is something we should be concerned about. We're recording this, of course, the day after that Elon Musk has been announced as the world's first trillionaire. That and most of his money, of course, he's turned around and said, "Oh, well, I don't actually have that money. It's invested in all my businesses," and there's no level of irony there that most of those businesses are using AI, and that sort of tool. So you're right, and I'm not going to sit here for a second and say that the rich aren't getting richer off of AI. But what I would focus upon is that even though that is a big problem that needs to be solved, what we are the what would be the solution? What would be the solution? Should we ban AI? Because if we ban AI, we're not actually going to be impacting those people at the top. Because those business owners can still afford to take on developers. Those business owners can still afford to take on content creators. Those business owners can still afford to take on whatever staff that they need to be able to deliver what they do. They are still going to make money. They are still going to have businesses. If we were to ban AI, what we would see is those teachers who are not able to create those lesson plans as quickly as they were, and therefore our children are going to be impacted. That receptionist who's actually able to save time on writing emails and therefore be able to actually justify an increase in productivity on their job, they're not able to do that anymore. That content creator who comes home from a night shift from an NHS security job and spends a couple of hours writing some content using AI a lot more quickly is able to spend a little bit more time with their family, have the energy to be able to sleep after a really hard night's work, and that sort of thing. The people are saying that AI should be banned because the rich are getting richer, but it's not the rich that would suffer if we did. It would be people like you and me, people who are actually using AI to better ourselves, and people who are using AI to actually deliver something good.
Okay, I'm going to push back a little bit there on some terminology, which was you seem to be the, the point you're trying to make there is that it would be worse if AI was banned. We wouldn't. We'd be where we are, status quo. The status quo isn't always a bad thing, you know. Every generation's always said it. My generation had it best. We're the generation that was right. You know, no one ever thinks that the new generation has it good. And that's not a thing that anyone ever says. Sometimes the status quo, like you started to put off there saying, yeah, it's like sure the corporation would have to they could just hire lots of people like that's more jobs. That's a good thing, surely.
Well, okay. If AI was going to be banned, and then the rich people will go back to the way that it was before and whatever, let's just say, for example, that let's just say the UK, right? We're gonna take the moral high ground, and we're gonna say, right, we're not using any AI at all. We're gonna go back to the way that it was, the good old days, where people are going down to mines and then going down to a pub, and going home and having their wife cook for them and that sort of. I mean, where's the line? Where would you go back to? What is the good old days before any sort of technology? Do we get rid of television? Do we get rid of internet? Do we get rid of Google, to Netflix? Because all of those things use AI. They all use AI. So if we were to ban AI, you need to first of all define where the actual line is, and about what would happen. And you would say that yes, do you know what? We're actually going to create some more jobs, but actually, would we? Because there are so many jobs out there that are reliant upon the continued growth that is being enabled and assisted by, not directed by, the increased use of AI. And the same thing would happen as if if the printing press was banned, or if the telephone was banned, or the internet was banned, or that sort of thing. That wouldn't actually take us any further forward. We would be stuck. The technology already exists. Plus, whilst we're all doing that in the UK and holding the moral high ground and saying absolutely we're not going to use AI to burn our world, China are then going on and actually absolutely destroying everybody else to say, well, we are now upskilling all of our team and all of our work and all of our staff and our infrastructure and everything like that, and becoming even more of a superpower. All of a sudden, our national grid decides to fall over because the AI system that was propping it up to move stuff over can't handle the load anymore, and we start seeing rolling blackouts. And I don't know, I might be being a little bit cynical about the whole thing, but yeah, listen, as I said, I'm not going to say that the rich are going to continue to get richer off AI, and you're absolutely right. But if we ban it, it wouldn't actually leave us at the status quo. It would send us backwards compared to the rest of the world.
Okay. I'm going to move on to the next segment we had sketched out, which is AI and creativity. Is creativity the process, or is it the outcome?
So I think I've kind of touched on this before, is that I don't think creativity is the process or the outcome. I think creativity is about the intention itself. Coming back to my a whole Steven Spielberg, the difference between an AI artist and a traditional artist is not the ability to put something onto canvas. The ability is about how to convey meaning from whatever it is that they're trying to do. The reality is, I'm not going to say, and again, this is another thing that I really struggle with myself, because my 3-year-old is very much AI slop, right? Which is a term that is coming around a lot, and it's just these low effort AI content is just everywhere at the moment. And I forget his name, Mark something, the CEO of YouTube, said last year, we're going to stop AI slop. And so far it's gotten worse on YouTube, and it's seeping out into everywhere else, including adverts on TV now that are completely created by AI. But that's not a fault of AI. That's actually a distribution flaw, not a technical flaw. It's not actually about the ability of the AI tool to be able to create those sort of things. It's the fact that we as a consumer are willing to accept it. And I think that's probably where the hassle is. Coming back to what I said about art earlier, is that somebody creates an AI video of K-pop demon hunters or whatever it currently is. I don't know, and a karaoke dog, and that sort of thing. It's cheap content that has been created by somebody sat at a keyboard, and that sort of thing. On the other hand, the Coca-Cola advert that brings so many people joy just by the feeling that it brings, because there was a whole team of creative directors that actually got involved in creating that advert. The only difference was is that it was a computer system that created it rather than actors. And I'm just like, do you know what we're talking about here is actually it's something called the value of friction. Is to say that, you know, art is only art if somebody spends 100 hours in making it. Why does it have to be that way? You know, paintbrushes 100, 500 years ago were made of horsehair. Um, they were a pain to make, and they would always break, and they would never work properly, and people have to replace them all the time. And a painter, Leonardo da Vinci, wrote about having to go through several dozen paintbrushes just to create one particular painting. Paintbrushes today are made with much better technology, and they last an awful lot longer. Does that make their art any less valuable because their paintbrushes are better? I don't see why it does.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of lean towards your way on this, on some of this. Like, for example, the one that stuck in my head was from my research was, um, if technology is anti-creativity, why do we have photography as a discipline?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. Which, do
um,
you know, that's a perfect example because photography was seen as the death of the portrait painters. And so many people protested against the idea of photography being considered art when photography was invented in like the 19th, 1830s, I think it was. You're absolutely right. People protested about that then, exactly the same way. But exactly, you can go and do whole degrees now on the fine
yeah,
art of photography.
but it's on the sort of like the counterbalance of it, though, is like the one for this on me is as you mentioned, the AI slop. You
Yeah.
can type you like there's that. It used to be you'd hire copywriters to write prose and then mass distribute that way through various different sites or things.
Hmm.
Now you can make an article which isn't very in depth on any subject, and if you it's getting to the point I was found the other day when I was googling something, and I get spammed with 101 different results, none of which is actually a person written it, you know,
Yeah.
and it comes out a mile away. It's just like, and it's just there's suddenly this data overload of
Yeah. Yeah.
AI generated slop that you can't get anything that's written by someone with real in-depth knowledge on the subject. It's getting
Yeah.
harder to reference that way.
You are right, but again, this comes back to my point earlier about this actually being this is not something that has been created by this is something that by AI. This is something that's been created by the way that we absorb content as a society, as a culture. And let's be very clear: is that there is a reason why these AI slop videos and these AI generated articles and whatever end up at the top of our feeds because so many other people interact with them. So the only way we're actually going to be able to see through that is that if we were to gain that critical sort of view and to say that I'm not accepting that as a valid response. I don't want that anymore. I don't want that in my feed. And enough people do that, if people were to actually be able to see through the fact that this is a low value piece of work that I'm looking at right now, this is not going to satisfy me, we will eventually start to become victims of our own success and start to see the higher quality stuff coming through. Whether it's AI assisted or not, it doesn't really matter. The intention behind it still comes from a person. This is more to do with our algorithmic choices than it is to do with AI's tools.
But then algorithms arguably also run by AI on certain platforms now
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
So
yeah. Well, have been
it's
for many, many years. For many, many years, the whole, Zuckerberg has talked about the various different types of machine learning models that Meta, as it is now, Facebook as it was, created in order to show us what we have on the feed, and it's all AI. So, and I think that's an important point to mention is that people say, "Oh, this is AI." Actually, you're painting something with a brush that you clearly don't understand because AI can be a lot of things, not just um, a video of a cat singing karaoke.
Well, I'm going to move us on because I think we already touched on this subject a lot in the previous hours anyway. So I think we've
Yeah,
already
yeah,
covered a lot of ground on this, and
yeah.
I'm aware that time's kind of running ahead of us a little bit here. So going to move on to segment 6, which is social media virtue signaling. Are people genuinely concerned, or are they trying to get moral superiority?
So I'm going to call this. I spent a lot. I'd spent a long time looking into this. So I'm going to make sure I get the term right because this is a specific psychological term. If I see now, I can't find it. It is basically it is tribalism at its best. Is what I'm saying. Is that the whole idea of a this is AI and therefore I'm canceling it, or this is AI and therefore I'm not watching it, is just toxic in itself. And I could put across to you actually, and I'll find the link to show you because I was absolutely flabbergasted when this happened. A genuine artist who was accused and bullied off TikTok because they were just consistently being bombarded with this is AI, this is shit, this is rubbish, I'm canceling you. And she had spent like, you know, an immense amount. She'd put it, same as what I was saying earlier, her heart and soul had gone into this art, only to be directed by people to say, oh, this must be AI, because I can't accept that anybody could be that good. Or that sort of thing. People who basically shout out the whole AI thing is it it is toxic, and as soon as one person says it, everybody jumps on the bandwagon and becomes very much a tribalism thing, and it's upsetting to see people just completely um, disregard somebody putting their heart on their sleeve and going out there in public and saying, you know, this is a message that has come from my soul, only to be said, nah, it's AI shit.
But a lot of the arguments you're making there, surely, they apply to, like, going back 10 years ago, like, people who protested vehemently climate change were demonized
Hmm.
equally as much. And then society tends to cleave closer to the climate change activists nowadays, apart from the extreme examples, obviously. Like Greta Thunberg became like the poster child for a generation, more or less.
Yes,
So
through a
is
clever
is
use of social media.
but is it not a world where we're in the wrong? Well, these people could be right. Like, maybe we're not not seeing the full environmental picture. Is this the next you know the next big environmental topic potentially?
So, I mean, it could be, and you know, coming back to what I was saying earlier, there's no getting away from the fact that AI and data centers are using a huge amount of power and water. You know, not to the scale of some people are claiming it is, but you know, I'm not going to pretend that it's not or shouldn't be a concern. You know, from that area, but the and I'm going to be attacked in saying this, and I know a lot of people are going to get me saying that, is that most of those people who are coming down this whole self-righteousness sort of, I think AI is burning the world, so therefore I'm going to remove myself from it completely. It's nothing more than performative outrage, and it's sort of it's only protecting the the tribalistic identity that I was talking about. It's not protecting the actual artists, and the hypocrisy of it actually comes from the fact that it's the very AI recommendation systems that are providing this content to them so that they can broadcast their outrage in the first place. And you know, they get into this whole echo chamber of everything is AI, and therefore I'm going to hate everything and hate the world or whatever. Whereas actually, do you know what? If you just opened your curtains and you had a look at the art that is available outside of your window, you might calm down a little bit, dude. You know, it's a bit. I just think it's dangerous. Think it's dangerous to have that amount of hate towards something that they clearly don't understand. And yeah, so that's as far as I'm actually going to go because I know how controversial that take is. But yeah, That's where I am.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at the point where like, yeah, hands up, I use AI. Yeah, but anyone knows me knows I use AI for things to just to streamline. I haven't got a lot of free time, so I streamline a lot of my day.
Yeah,
But I noticed the other day when I used AI to change color shift a picture, to
yeah.
you know, I uploaded it and it said, due to the tags, this is going to be this is going to be tagged as made by AI due to the data tags in the
Yes.
image.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you're now even called out, like even just for minor users, it's almost become policy that you're getting called out for having used AI.
Okay, there is a bit of legislative direction behind that, though. The EU AI Act has actually made that law in all of EU member states that if anything has been used or created with AI, it should be labeled as so. But there are still many AI creators out there who are finding ways around that, using technology to find ways around that. You're absolutely right. You go on LinkedIn, you post an AI edited or a completely AI made image on Facebook, LinkedIn, or anything like that. It'll automatically tag it. But if I was to go and run that same image or video through another editing tool and export it that way, that AI tag disappears. So there are ways around it. So, but these organizations are learning to say that, we are supposed to be doing the right thing here. We are supposed to be transparent in saying that actually we're supposed to be using AI. But it's not the AI's fault that people are deliberately, consciously taking action to overrule that legislation or that policy to do that. I on my website, one of the first things that I did on my new version of my website was to create an AI transparency policy. And it's there. And I am completely transparent to say that this is what I will use AI for. This is what I will not use AI for. And if somebody doesn't like that, then my content is not for them. And I accept that. What I'm not going to do, and and I'm hoping that more people will sort of like pick up this thing, is to turn around and say, I've created something by AI and pretend that it's not. And I think that's the risk that we're seeing at the moment, and I think that's what's feeding into a lot of these people that are sort of like, oh, I hate AI, because people are pretending that they've created this whole thing by themselves, and it's that in itself is harmful, but it is feeding into this whole tribalistic view to say that, which is becoming quite toxic, where people who are even not using AI are now being accused to do so. What did I see? I saw a TikTok channel the other day, where they had it made without AI written across every single one of their videos. And I thought about that for a second. I thought, I kind of understand why they're doing it. And then the more I thought about it, the more it annoyed me, because it's like organic food, right? You go to a supermarket and you pay an extra pound for a bunch of bananas because it's 100% organic. And now this idea of being organic is now seen as luxury branding. And it's the same thing with made without AI. It's just that, this is premium content, sort of thing. And it's made to make people to feel ethically superior, but it's not. It's just moral posturing, and it's actually leading to hurt people, like genuine artists who are then being accused of using AI when they're actually not. And people are being publicly harassed and bullied off social media for trying to portray their art because some dickweasel thinks they're being clever by calling them out for AI when they clearly not. They don't understand what's going on. But if you're against AI, then delete your TikTok because it's using AI to provide that video for you. If you're against AI, stop using Google because it's been using AI to provide you results. Stop using Netflix. Stop using anything because it's all that. You're allowed to be against AI. That's fine, but be very, very transparent and clear about what you're actually against. But because if you're against all AI, then you should probably get away from technology.
Fair enough. Obviously, you've already mentioned the public shaming, but like, do you not think that like the whole like example that I just gave that he tags it because it was made with AI, is that not like almost like a flag in itself to make you like I don't want to use I don't want to use AI to help me do things now, because people will see that tag and then think that it's shit, or won't even look at it because it's AI, because it says made with AI. Like, pardon me for swearing,
Yeah,
but
and no,
it's
no, no, you're right. You're all right to go. And the thing is, I think there will continue to be an element of this in the same way as, when the telegram was first invented, where somebody would actually angrily physically write out a letter with a fountain pen in response to a telegram after being personally insulted that somebody would dare use this newfangled technology to communicate with them. And there's something that has happened many, many times throughout history with various different technologies that have come through. So yes, this will sort of be there, but I believe it will actually genuinely fade away for a number of different reasons, and mostly because AI is not going to go away, but because eventually so many people are starting to see the true benefit of actually what it's a time tax, right? It's actually it's saving them so much in time to be able to do the things that they actually love, and this is something that I'm hoping that more people are going to be able to sort of like sort of see through eventually. So, my kids are going to grow up. And my little one's going to grow up, and AI is just going to be embedded into everything that he does, and all of a sudden, this whole posturing that's going on at the moment will just simply not exist anymore. But so I believe that the people will eventually sort of stop saying that sort of thing, because ultimately it's hurtful to genuine people.
right. Again, I'm going to move us along a little bit, because, like I say, we originally sketched together like an hour sort of estimation. We're currently an hour and a quarter, so I just want to get to
Yeah, I talk a lot. You ought to
the
see how my training sessions go. My training sessions always run over because I talk a lot. Sorry, I apologize.
that's the worst type. I like my training sessions to be like an hour short. Like, okay, you can all go home early now. That's how I like my training sessions, Chris. um, Section 7, which is the future no one wants to talk about. This is the hard questions about the future
Yeah.
under AI. I mean, I'll open up with one that we already mentioned, kind of half mentioned, is um, like doing filtering through job applications at the moment is a nightmare, because you, traditionally it's already hard to try to judge someone based upon a small amount of information.
Yeah.
Now I'm judging a lot of people based upon a lot of information, because they've had ChatGPT fill out all the
Yeah.
buzzwords for NHS employment.
Hmm.
Uh, could look through this thing, pick out all the buzzwords, and write me a specification.
Yes.
And to me, it's also painfully obvious when they do it, but you can't not read through it, because you don't get any information either. And it just makes the entire process a nightmare.
So when auto CV readers were first invented, and were starting to filter out people from the recruitment process just through picking up particular words or characteristics or phrases or whatever. Was that a good thing when that happened?
I mean, we don't use auto sorters, so I really can't comment.
Hmm.
I was ordered manually and always have been. Um, but yeah, people being discarded out of hand automatically without any sort of reading, I would agree is a bad thing. I would,
Yeah,
on
yeah.
principle.
Because Amazon tried it and got it very, very, very wrong. It was actually quite a famous case where for recruiting for a sort of like middle level management for the developer sort of firm, they used their existing staff CVs to train to train an AI model to automatically filter through CVs that they were getting in for a particular job, but they had to pull it like really, really quickly because they had completely forgotten that 99% of the people that they employed in that department were all male. So it was just automatically ruling out all females as a result. When you use any kind of technology in any sort of human led process, recruitment being the perfect example, we don't have to figure out ways of getting around the technology. We need to make the human-led process better. Recruitment is one of those things. I've done recruitment as well, and it's one of those things where you have to follow your gut a lot of the times. That are they actually genuinely, saying that they've got these skills? Are they able to prove this in the way? Do we need to invest a little bit more into sort of like proficiency testing, or so on and so forth? There are organizations out there that will consult other organizations into how to run their recruitment strategies because it's difficult, right? It's really, really challenging. So my argument to that is that, yeah, loads of people are now using ChatGPT to write a CV and a cover letter or whatever, but that means that the interviewers need to then be better at their process, and that sort of thing. And do you know what they could probably use for that? Probably an AI tool.
Well, that's the point I was about to sort of like raise as well. Is at the moment we have kind of like a Looney Tunes-esque sort of like, the whole like sort of cartoon where one person pulls out a gun, one person pulls out a bazooka, one person pulls out a rocket. You have AIs being trained to not be found as AIs, whilst at the same time that same AI is being trained to find people who are using AI, to track people using AI. You have you know,
Yeah.
you have AIs that but at the same time trying to obfuscate that they're AIs and trying to be trained to figure out if someone is an AI.
Yeah.
Where does it where does the madness end?
And this is the big danger, and I think this is sort of like this can be threaded through everything that I've said tonight. Is that AI is getting to a stage now where it is becoming more and more difficult to spot if it's AI, and this is why that AI text detectors are no longer reliable. And in fact, they have stopped becoming reliable, maybe from like ChatGPT 3.5, definitely ChatGPT 4, and we are now on ChatGPT 5.5. I think was the latest model that came out. They have become so advanced and so clever at what they do, and not only that, people are becoming more skilled in using them. That basically means AI detectors for text specifically are null and void now. They're actually worthless, and I know a lot of organizations have actually already dropped them. Some are still kind of hanging on to it because they think, oh, we need to try and weed out some people somehow. They need to feel like they're doing something, but there isn't a single AI developer out there in the world who would put their hat down on an effective and reliable AI detector for text. Your example earlier about imagery, that's got nothing to do with its ability to detect an AI image. It's the metadata that comes along with a photo. That's the only reason it knows, and it's been created by AI. So yes, you're right. We are seeing a bit of an escalation, but what you'll hear a lot of AI tutors say is that we want to use AI to help make our processes more efficient, more effective, cost effective, more accurate. And therefore, there must always be a human in the loop to be able to have that critical thought and that creativity and that empathy with a person. But we're starting to see a shift now, actually, is that process changes are no longer having a human in the loop. Process changes must be a human in the lead. And this is what we're going to start to see, I think, over the next maybe 2 years or so, with people adopting AI for things like recruitment and for things like team management and process management and quality assurance and all that sort of thing, is that it will be a person at the front leading an AI assisted process that will help drive things forward. That person being there will need to be super skilled in everything that they're doing. So as long as we continue on this route of actually it's still a person that makes the decision, not the AI. And as long as that continues to happen, I don't think we'll ever see that escalation because that person will always be leading. The AI is following behind. That's I don't know. Maybe I'm hoping a bit much, but that's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, I mean, another sector that I've seen that's been growth for AI, and this is one of the uses of AI that I personally absolutely abhor and hate. And you're gonna know as soon as I say it. You know what I mean. you go onto a website, you say, "I'm having an issue. Can I speak to an advisor?"
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
what problems are you having? Like, are you a person? No, but what problems are you having? Well, I'm having this problem. Is that one of these problems? No, it's not. Okay, what problem are you having? And you get to a point where you're pulling your hair out. I just need to speak to an actual human to deal
Yeah.
with my issue. But because it's cheaper, everywhere's using AI help bots to
Mhm.
like. But you might as well just have an FAQ page for as good as most of them are.
Yeah, exactly. And I've used a few of these in my research. Rufus, Amazon's one, is absolutely hilarious because it's based. I think it's based on Anthropic's Claude, one of their models, at least anyway. And they've locked it down now. But like a couple of months ago, you could go into Amazon, and you could ask it to help you with like coding and stuff like that because it was awful. It was crazy. As time goes on and as technology sort of like improves and these sort of models improve, these experiences that you're highlighting, which are awful and frustrating, will actually start to improve. We're seeing actually there's a couple of different elements, and I could talk about this for too long, so I'm going to try and summarize it. Is that there are organizations that have adopted AI too quickly. And they've been like, "Oh, brilliant! This model can do this for me, so I'm just going to sack all of my live chat agents and I'm going to let the AI do it." What's happening is that all those organizations are losing customers as a result. The same thing happened when it became popular for companies to move their contact centers offshore. A lot of them went to India, a lot of them went to South Africa, some of them went to Singapore and that sort of thing. And it saved them tons of money. They were able to profiteer quite a lot from it. But a lot of organizations lost a lot of customers. And it actually took about a decade where before these organizations were, if we want to keep alive, we need to start bringing some of these contact centers back on shore. And I experienced this. I was there. I worked for a company where we had a lot of offshore activity, and they were moving more and more and more offshore. And then the company nearly went bankrupt as a result because the customers just couldn't deal with them. And I think we're going to start to see the same thing with AI at the moment. People have adopted AI too quickly. They've made decisions too quickly as a money-saving activity only, not considering the customers, not leading by that person, as I said earlier, and they'll suffer from it. So yeah, as a summary, they will improve these chatbots, but the ones who've adopted too quickly and just not actually worked through it properly, they're going to suffer as businesses in the same way as other businesses have by cost saving exercises like that.
And staying in the theme of the segment, you know, what jobs disappear first? So, like, in my opinion, from what I've seen already, is the creative industry is going to be
Hmm.
gutted. Not obviously not like I'm not talking like Disney movies or anything like that. I mean like anyone who's like just a stay-at-home artist.
Yeah.
The where they made their money, like you're not going to pay a premium rate for something that you could do yourself in 2 minutes now. You know,
So this comes
you
back to what.
do
Carry on, yeah.
like the typical cottage artist. Sits in a cottage, makes a picture, sells it on eBay or
See.
whatever they're using now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Ironically, Etsy, that is full of these little artists, is actually going from strength to strength. There is an appetite for it. There is an appetite for people looking for homemade, heartfelt pieces of work, pieces of art, and that sort of thing. From lower artists. Redbubble is another one. Redbubble almost disappeared back in the early 2010s, but now all of a sudden everyone's all over it again. So there is still an appetite for people to actually go and do that. Um, I think optimist in me likes to think that the people that one of the reasons why that appetite is starting to increase again a little bit is because they know that they can go and create this stuff themselves through ChatGPT, but also know that actually, do you know what? I'm not I'm not as talented as somebody else. Let's talk about music as a perfect example, because you could go on 1,000,001 apps nowadays and go and create a music track using AI, and publish it onto Spotify and start making money out of it and whatever. The vast majority of them are awful, but there are one or two that sort of like really shine out and actually are really, really popular. There was a TikTok trend, I don't know if you saw it lately, off the song I Shit My Pants in the Middle of All. Have you seen that one? It's
No, I have not.
hilarious. But the song was created by AI, fully by AI, and nobody knew until they started digging into it and that sort of thing. But that's an exception to the rule. The vast majority of AI music is actually rubbish. It's not fantastic. It doesn't work very well. Coming back to the whole art thing earlier, is that if a piece of music moves you to tears, does it matter how it was created? I would argue that it actually doesn't, because there's still a person's intention behind that piece of work. Anyway, I digress ever so slightly. What we're seeing here is, yes, creative roles are starting to see a big, huge shift, and people are just not finding it beneficial anymore to sort of do a lot of the digital art sort of work anymore, because AI can do it. There is still an appetite for the homemade stuff that'll continue. I'm sure it'll actually. I reckon it will probably see a trend upwards, but the digital art stuff, yeah, we're starting to see a bit of a bit of a thing. But there are also other digital artists out there who are seeing greater successes because they're able to start using AI to assist them with their work. They're doing it quicker, they're doing it at a much higher quality, they know what they're looking for, they know what works, they're using that information, that knowledge, that skill, that creativity that they hold as a person to feed into the AI tools and be able to do that. It's the people who are refusing to use AI are the ones who are falling behind. And I've actually got a quote about this. Let me find this. I got it. Um, People look at the future of AI as if it's like a tidal wave that you just have to stand there and just take it, and people are letting anxiety be about AI and what AI is going to do to jobs to sort of dictate the narrative. But back in 1971, there was a chap called Alan Kay who was he invented the graphical user interface, amongst lots of other things like the concept of object-oriented programming. So the applications that we are using today, the games that we play, wouldn't have been possible without this chap. Okay, so he knows what he's doing and knows what he's talking about. He famously made a quote to say the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And a lot of people have taken that as a little bit of a mantra to say that if you changed it to things like be the change you want to see in the world, and that sort of thing. As technology has improved, we're not in a computer lab anymore. We're not sitting there like tapping away and creating this new technology. We're in the real world. There's a chap called Peter Cheese. I love his name. He's currently the CEO of the Chartered Institute of Personal Development. So his whole job is about how governments can work, governments, local government and central government can work to help people develop themselves even further. And he's updated Alan Kay's original quote. He said, the best way to predict the future is to help shape it. So if we run away from AI out of guilt, we're not shaping anything. What we're actually doing is abandoning the steering wheel and letting massive monopolies then hold all the cards. The future belongs to those of us, the people, the humans, who want to use those machines to design what the future looks like. That's what I go by.
Okay. And kind of following on directly from that, like what business, what segments, what job, what's the jobs that you should be if you're going to give advice to your kids, like what are the growth segment jobs that you see coming from this? What should they
Yeah.
focus on?
So data literacy is one of the big. There's two skills that I'm telling my kids, and I'm actively having this conversation with them: data literacy and critical thinking. Data literacy is very technology based, and you can use AI to actually do an awful lot of it. But where people are missing the whole process of data literacy is it needs a person to understand what data they should be gathering and analyzing in the first place. And it needs a person to actually make that judgment and that decision about what the data is telling you. We do not have in this country, and this is something that's it's a topic that's really really close to my heart, and I'm going to do a little bit of a plug for my website, even though it's still very sort of new at the moment. I'm building it up based on this idea that data literacy doesn't have to be a difficult thing. So I'm in the middle of creating and producing a lot of resources where people can learn data literacy for free, because I genuinely heartfelt believe that that is going to be the deciding factor for a lot of people as to whether or not they retain value into the job market or if they've lost it completely. So data literacy is one of them. And the second thing is critical thinking. It's critical thought. It's not taught enough in schools. It's not actually picked up to say, people go to school, and I read a LinkedIn post this morning, in fact, and it really, really touched me to say that, as a teacher, this is a teacher who actually wrote this, as a substitute teacher went into a school, and they assigned their students, who were around about 8 or 9, a piece of work to do. And a hand went up, and a question was, do I have to write my name on a piece of paper? Well, how do you normally do it? Yes, we write on it, then go ahead and do that. Another hand went up. Do I have to write the date on my piece of paper? And the teacher was like, well, what do you normally do? Well, we normally write the date, then go ahead. Her concern is that children are being brought up in school at the moment to not question instructions. They have been followed into this almost uniformity of you will not do anything unless you were told to do it. And we really need to move away from that. We need to question why. Why are we doing this? What is the value? What is the benefit of doing this? And you know what? Writing your name and a date on a piece of paper might actually be the right thing to do. But our children need to have the confidence to know that that's the right thing to do, to look at a task, any task that they're asked to do, and to question why. So those are the two things. Data literacy, critical thought, critical sort of like approach to any sort of task are the skills that I would do. Those two skills are in pretty much every single technology job that I have ever seen advertised in there at the moment. So if we do start to see, well, we are starting to see job shifts towards that sort of technology area, then do you know what? You won't be going far wrong by focusing on those two things.
Okay. Right, and with that, I think we more or less made our way through all of the content we had prepared.
I'm glad of that. I got to the bottom of my notes.
Hopefully, I tripped you up a little bit on a couple of them.
There were a couple, yeah.
yes.
There were a couple. No, you're right.
But thank you very much for your time. I do appreciate you spending it going through all of this with us. You wanted to plug your website, you were saying?
I did, yeah. So, as I said, it's still very early on, but you will find it on datawithduke.com. I've done a lot of CEO work on it, so if you just search for Data with Duke, it should come up quite high. I've got a few blogs on there, I've got a few videos, podcasts, and I've got some lessons on spreadsheets work is where we're sort of like starting. But I've got intention to include more stuff on data analysis through other different tools that are available out there. Some are free, some are paid for, skills that you'll have in there. But I'll also be including a lot of stuff on AI again in the future as well. So it would be great to have you bookmark that website and let us know what you think on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, obviously I'll make sure that in the clips I make, etc., I'll try and include it in the link in the information. Just anyone wants to read more about the subject. I'm sure that as you already figured out, Chris likes to hear himself speak. So if you have any questions, I'm sure he would love to hear them. And again, thank you very much for spending the time, though. I do appreciate it.
Yeah,
it's been very informative.
Just before we shoot off, so anybody who watches this YouTube, so recorded on YouTube, so it'll be available for anyone to watch on YouTube. Obviously, Frontal Plays, we've hosted me. Thank you very much for being such a gracious host. I very, very much appreciate your time. Please, if anybody enjoys watching game streams and some, aging guy playing Hearthstone and having a wonderful conversation about absolutely anything that you throw at him, please make sure that you're following Frontal Plays on Twitch.
All right. Again, I think that's about everything, folks. I do think Charlie just shown up about now. I think he's woken up now, apparently. So,
Old man should have been in bed 3 hours ago. Yeah, probably.
right. Again, take care, folks, and I will see you again soon, hopefully. Bye bye.